Hi, my name is Ethan Anthony, and this is the Dictionary Audiobook Project. This is day one, and today we will be reading the preface and explanatory notes for the Merriam-Webster Dictionary. Let's begin. The Merriam-Webster Dictionary. The preface. This new edition of the Merriam-Webster Dictionary continues the line of Merriam-Webster paperback dictionaries, which began in 1947. It is based on and preserves the best aspects of preceding editions, but it now includes the most important recent vocabulary that was added to the Merriam-Webster.com dictionary over the past decade. Throughout the dictionary, over 8,000 usage examples illustrates meanings and helps to clarify definitions. All the new material has been based on examples of actual use found in the Merriam-Webster citation files and in edited texts online. Nearly 65,000 entries and more than 75,000 definitions in this dictionary give coverage to the most frequently used words in the language. The heart of the dictionary is the A to Z vocabulary section, where readers will find information about meaning, spelling, pronunciation, etymology, and synonyms. This section is followed by others that users have long found useful. The section Foreign Words and Phrases covers words and phrases from other languages that often occur in English texts, but have not become part of the English vocabulary. The section Geographical Names identifies places of importance in the United States and the world. The Merriam-Webster Dictionary was created by a company that has been publishing dictionaries for more than 175 years. It continues to maintain an in-house staff of experienced lexicographers. For this edition, the primary editing was done by Linda Picard Wood, Serenity H. Carr, and Susan L. Brady. Specialist editors include Emily A. Vicina for cross-reference, Joshua S. Gunter for pronunciation, James L. Rader for etymology, Daniel B. Brandon for physical science, and Joan I. Narmontis for life science. Data entry and data file processing were handled by Anne McDonald, Paul S. Wood, Data entry and data file processing were handled by Anne McDonald. Paul S. Wood acted as production editor, guiding the book through its typesetting stages. Proofreaders include Faith Bell, Tasha R. Bigelow, Faith DeCastro, Allison M. DeJordy, Joanne M. Desprez, Michael Mativier, and Diana O'Shurin, as well as some of the other editors mentioned above. All the editors join in the hope that users will find the Merriam-Webster Dictionary to be a concise, handy, and reliable guide to the English language of today. Explanatory notes. The dictionary contains so much information that it is necessary to condense much of it to accommodate the limitations of the printed page. This section provides information on the conventions used throughout the dictionary, from the styling of entries and pronunciations to how information on usage and meaning is presented. An understanding of the information contained in these notes will make the dictionary both easier and more rewarding to use. Entries. A bold-faced letter or a combination of such letters, including punctuation marks and diacritics, where needed. Let's try that sentence one more time. A bold-faced letter or a combination of such letters, including punctuation marks and diacritics where needed, that is set flush with the left-hand margin of each column of type is a main entry. The main entry may consist of letters set solid, of letters joined by a hyphen or a diagonal, or of letters separated by one or more spaces. The material and light-based type that follows each main entry on the same line and on succeeding indented lines presents information about the main entry. The main entries follow one another in alphabetical order, letter by letter. Bill of Attainder follows billion. Day of Atonement follows daylight savings time. Those containing an Arabic numeral are alphabetized as if the numeral were spelled out. 4H comes before fourfold and 400. 3D comes before 3 and 3-dimensional. Those that often begin with the abbreviation ST in common usage have the abbreviation spelled out. St. Valentine's Day. Main entries that begin with MC are alphabetized just as they are spelled. A pair of guide words is printed at the top of each page. These indicate that the entries falling alphabetically between the words at the top of the outer column of each page are found on that page. The guide words are the first and last main entries printed on the page. When one main entry has exactly the same written form as another, the two are distinguished by superscript numbers preceding each other. Full words come before parts of words made up of the same letters. Solid compounds come before hyphenated compounds. Hyphenated compounds come before open compounds. And lowercase entries come before those with an initial capital. The center dots within entry words indicate division points, at which a hyphen may be put at the end of a line of print or writing. Thus, the noun cappuccino may be ended on one line and continued on the next in this manner. Center dots are not shown after a single initial letter or before a single terminal letter because typesetters seldom cut off a single letter. Nor are they usually shown as the second and succeeding homographs unless they differ among themselves. There are acceptable alternative end-of-line divisions just as there are acceptable variant spellings and pronunciations, but no more than one division is shown for any entry in this dictionary. A double hyphen at the end of a line in this dictionary, as in the definition at citronella, stands for a hyphen that is retained when the word is written as a unit on one line. This kind of fixed hyphen is always represented in bold-faced words in this dictionary with an in dash, longer than an ordinary hyphen. When a main entry is followed by the word or in another spelling, the two spellings are equal variants. Both are standard and either one may be used according to personal inclination. If two variants joined by or are out of alphabetical order, they remain equal variants. The one printed first is, however, slightly more common than the second. When another spelling is joined to the main entry by the word also, the spelling after also is a secondary variant and occurs less frequently than the first. Secondary variants belong to standard usage and may be used according to personal inclination. Once the word also is used to signal a secondary variant, all following variants are joined by or. Variants whose spelling puts them alphabetically more than a column away from the main entry are entered at their own alphabetical places as well as the main entry. Variants have a usage label appear only at their own alphabetical places. To show all the stylings that are found for English compounds requires space that can be better used for other information, so this dictionary limits itself to a single styling for a compound. When a compound is widely used and one styling predominates, that styling is shown. When a compound is uncommon or when the evidence indicates that 2 or 3 stylings are approximately equal in frequency, the styling shown is based on the comparison of other similar compounds. A main entry may be followed by one or more derivatives or by a homograph with a different functional label. These are run-on entries. Each is introduced by a long dash and each has a functional label. They are not defined, however, since their meaning are readily understood from the meaning of the root word. A main entry may be followed by one or more phrases containing the entry word or an inflected form of it. These are also run-on entries. Each is introduced by a long dash, but there is no functional label. They are, however, defined since their meanings are more than the sum of the meanings of their elements. Defined phrases of this sort are run on at the entry defining the first major word in the phrase. When there are variants, however, the run-on appears at the entry defining the first major word, which is invariable in the phrase. Bold-faced words that appear within parentheses as coca at cocaine, and jet engine and jet propulsion at jet propelled are run-in entries. Attention is called to the definition of vocabulary entry on page 823. The term dictionary entry includes all vocabulary entries as well as all bold-faced entries in the section. And the section is headed foreign words and phrases and geographical names. Pronunciation. The matter between a pair of reverse slashes following the entry word indicates the pronunciation. The symbols used are explained in the chart at the end of this section. A hyphen is used in the pronunciation to show syllabic division. These hyphens sometimes coincide with the center dots in the entry word that indicate end-of-line division. Sometimes they do not. A high set mark indicates major primary stressor accent. A low set mark indicates minor secondary stressor accent. The stress mark stands at the beginning of the syllable that receives the stress. A syllable with neither a high set mark nor a low set mark is unstressed. The presence of variant pronunciation indicates that not all educated speakers pronounce words the same way. A second place variant is not to be regarded as less acceptable than the pronunciation that is given first. It may, in fact, be used by as many educated speakers as the first variant, but the requirements of the printed page are such that one must precede the other. Symbols enclosed by parentheses represent elements that are present in the pronunciation of some speakers but are absent from the pronunciation of other speakers, or elements that are present in some but absent from other utterances of the same speaker. Thus, the above parentheses indicate that some people say omnibus and others say omnibus, some additional and some additional. When a main entry has less than a full pronunciation, the missing part is to be supplied from a pronunciation in the preceding entry or within the same pair of reversed flashes. The pronunciation of the first three syllables of championship is found at the main entry, champion. The hyphens before and after in the pronunciation of palavir indicate that both the first and last parts of the pronunciation are to be taken from the immediately preceding pronunciation. In general, no pronunciation is indicated for open compounds consisting of two or more English words that have own place entry. Only the first entry in a sequence of numbered homographs is given a pronunciation if the pronunciations are the same. The absent but implied pronunciation of derivatives and compounds run on after a main entry is a combination of the pronunciation at the main entry and the pronunciation of the other element is given at its alphabetical place in the vocabulary. Thus, the pronunciation of quickness is the sum of the pronunciations given at quick and ness. That of hold with, the sum of the pronunciations of the two elements that make up the phrase. Functional labels. An italic label indicating a part of speech or another functional classification follows the pronunciation or, if no pronunciation is given, the main entry. The atraditional parts of speech are indicated as follows: adjective, adverb, conjunction, interjection, noun, preposition, pronoun, verb. Other italicized labels used to indicate functional classifications that are not traditional parts of speech include abbreviation, compound form, prefix, adjective suffix, adverb suffix, noun suffix, verb suffix, symbol, and auxiliary, verbal auxiliary. Verbal auxiliary, yeah. Functional labels are sometimes combined. Inflected forms. The plurals of nouns are shown in this dictionary when suffixation brings about a change of final y to I. When the noun ends in a consonant plus o or an ey, when the noun ends in oo, when the noun has an irregular plural or an uninflected plural or a foreign plural, when the noun is a compound that pluralizes any element but the last, when a final consonant is doubled, when the noun has variant plurals, and when it is believed the dictionary user might have reasonable doubts about the spelling of the plural, or when the plural is spelled in a way contrary to what is expected. Cutback inflected forms are used when the noun has three or more syllables. The plurals of nouns are usually not shown when the base word is unchanged by suffixation. When the noun is a compound whose second element is readily recognizable as a regular free form entered at its own place, or when the noun is unlikely to occur in the plural. Nouns that are plural in form and that regularly occur in plural construction are labeled NPL. Nouns that are plural in form but that are not always constructed as plurals are appropriately labeled N single or plural. Verbs. I'm gonna take a drink real quick. Verbs. The principal parts of verbs The principal parts of verbs are shown in this dictionary when suffixation brings about a doubling of a final consonant or an elision of a final E or a change of final Y to I. When final C changes to CK in suffixation, when the verb ends in EY, when the inflection is irregular, when there are variant inflected forms, and when it is believed that the dictionary user might have reasonable doubts about the spelling of an inflected form, or when the inflected form is spelled in a way contrary to what is expected. The principal parts of a regularly inflected verb are shown when it is desirable to indicate the pronunciation of one of the inflected forms. Cutback inflected forms are usually used when the verb has 3 or more syllables, when it is a 2-syllable word that ends in L and has varied spellings, and when it is a compound whose second element is readily recognized as an irregular verb. The principal parts of verbs are usually not shown when the base word is unchanged by suffixation, or when the verb is a compound whose second element is readily recognizable as a regular free form entered at its own place. Another inflected form of English verbs is the third person singular of the present tense, which is regularly formed by the addition of s or es to the base form of the verb. This inflected form is not shown except at a handful of entries, as have and do, for which it is in some way unusual. Adjectives and adverbs. The comparative and superlative forms of adjectives and adverbs are shown in this dictionary when suffixation brings about a doubling of a final consonant or an elision of a final E, or a change of final Y to I when the word ends in EY, when the inflection is irregular, and when there are variant inflected forms. The superlative forms of adjectives and adverbs of 2 or more syllables are usually cut back. The comparative and superlative forms of regularly inflected adjectives and adverbs are shown when it is desirable to indicate the pronunciation of the inflected forms. The inclusion of inflected forms in ER and EST adjective and adverb entries means nothing more about the use of more and most. But these adjectives and adverbs in their comparative and superlative degrees may be expressed in either way. Lazier or more lazy, laziest or most lazy. At a few adjective entries, only the superlative form is shown. The absence of the comparative form indicates that there is no evidence of its use. The comparative and superlative forms of adjectives and adverbs are usually not shown when the base word is unchanged by suffixation. The inflected forms of the word are identical with those of the preceding homograph, or when the word is a compound whose second element is readily recognizable. Or when the word is a compound whose second element is readily recognizable as a regular free-formed entered at its own place. Inflected forms are not shown at undefined write-ons. Capitalization. Most entries in this dictionary begin with a lowercase letter. A few of these have an italicized label, often cap, which indicates that the word is as likely to be capitalized as not, and that it is as acceptable with an uppercase initial as it is with one in lowercase. Some entries begin with an uppercase letter, which indicates that the word is usually capitalized. The absence of an initial capital or of an often cap label indicates that the word is not ordinarily capitalized. The capitalization of entries that are open or hyphenated compounds is similarly indicated by the form of the entry or by an italicized label. A word that is capitalized in some senses and lowercase in others shows variations from the form of the main entry by the use of italicized labels at the appropriate senses. Etymology. This dictionary gives the etymology for a number of the vocabulary entries. These etymologies are inside square brackets preceding the definition. Meanings given in Roman type within these brackets are not definitions of the entry, but are meanings of the Middle English, Old English, or non-English words within the brackets. The etymology gives the language from which words borrowed into English have come. It also gives the form of the word in the language or a representation of the word in our alphabet if the form of the language differs from that in English. In etymology, beginning with the name of a language, including ME or OE, and not giving the foreign or Middle English or Old English form, indicates that this form is the same as the form of the entry words. In etymology, beginning with the name of a language, including ME or OE, and not giving the foreign or Middle English or Old English meaning, indicates that this meaning is the same as the meaning expressed in the first definition in the entry. Usage. Usage. 3 types of status labels are used in this dictionary: temporal, regional, and stylistic, to signal that a word or a sense of a word is not part of the standard vocabulary of English. The temporal label, OBS, or obsolete, means that there is no evidence of use since 1755. The label OBS is a comment on the word being defined. When the thing is distinguished from the word used to designate it is obsolete, appropriate orientation is usually given in the definition. The temporal label archaic means that a word or sense one in common use is found today only sporadically or in special contexts. A word or sense limited in use to a specific region of the U.S. has an appropriate label. The adverb chiefly precedes a label when the word has some currency outside the specified region, and a double label is used to indicate considerable currency in each of 2 specific regions. Words current in all regions of the U.S. have no label. A word or sense limited in use to one of the other countries of the English-speaking world has an appropriate regional label. The label dial for dialect indicates that the pattern of use of a word or sense is too complex for summary labeling. It usually includes several regional varieties of American English or of American and British English. The stylistic label slang is used with words or sentences that are especially appropriate in context of extreme informality. There is no satisfactory objective test for slang, especially with reference to a word out of context. No word in fact is invariably slang, and many standard words can be given slang applications. The stylistic labels offensive and disparaging are used for those words or senses that in common use are intended to hurt or that are likely to give offense even when they are used without such intent. Additional labels that are self-explanatory, such as informal, are used as some entries in sentences. Definitions are sometimes followed by verbal illustrations that show the typical use of the word in context. These illustrations are enclosed in angle brackets, and the word being illustrated is usually replaced by a light-faced swung dash. A swung dash stands for the boldface entry word, and it may be followed by an italicized suffix. Swung dash is not used when the form of the boldface entry word is changed in suffixation, and it is not used for open compounds. Definitions are sometimes followed by usage notes that give supplementary information about such matters as idiom, syntax, and semantic relationship. A usage note is introduced by a light-faced dash. Sometimes a usage note is used in place of a definition. Some function words as conjunctions and prepositions have chiefly grammatical meaning and little or no lexical meaning. Most interjections express feelings but are otherwise untranslatable into lexical meaning. And some other words, as honorific titles, are more amenable to comment than to definition. Sense division. A bold-faced colon is used in this dictionary to introduce a definition. It is also used to separate 2 or more definitions of a single sense. Bold-faced Arabic numerals separate the senses of a word that has more than one sense. A particular semantic relationship between senses is sometimes suggested by the use of one of the 2 italic sense dividers, ESP or also. The sense divider ESP, for especially, It is used to introduce the most common meaning included in the more general preceding definition. The sense divider also is used to introduce a meaning related to the preceding sense by an easily understood extension of that sense. The order of senses is historical. The sense known to have been first used in English is entered first. This is not to be taken to mean, however, that each sense of a multi-sense word developed from the immediately preceding sense. It is altogether possible that sense 1 of a word has given rise to sense 2, and sense 2 to sense 3, but frequently sense 2 and sense 3 may have developed independently of one another from sense 1. When an italicized label follows a bold-faced numeral, the label applies only to that specific numbered sense. It does not apply to any other bold-faced numbered senses. At craft, the PL label applies to sense 3, but to none of the other numbered senses. At father and cap, label applies only to sense 2, and the often cap label only to sense 5. At dulcimer, the variant spelling and pronunciation apply only to sense 2, and the chiefly Brit label at lift applies only to sense 5. Cross-reference. 4 different kinds of cross-references are used in this dictionary: directional, synonymous, cognate, and inflectional. In each instance, the cross-reference is readily recognized by the light-based small capitals in which it is printed. A cross-reference following a light-based dash and beginning with C is a directional cross-reference. It directs the dictionary user to look elsewhere for further information. A cross-reference following a bold-faced colon is a synonymous cross-reference. It may stand alone as the only definition for an entry or for a sense of an entry. It may follow an analytical definition. It may be one of 2 or more synonymous cross-references separated by commas. A synonymous cross-reference indicates that an entry, a definition at the entry, or a specific sense at the entry cross-referred to can be substituted as a definition for the entry or the sense in which the cross-reference appears. A cross-reference follows an italic VAR variant of is a cognate cross-reference. Occasionally, a cognate cross-reference has a limiting label preceding VAR of as an indication that the variant is not standard English. A cross-reference following an italic label that identifies an entry as an inflected form as of a noun or verb is an inflectional cross-reference. Inflectional cross-references appear only when the inflected form falls at least a column away from the entry cross-referred to. Synonyms. A bold italic synonym is preceded by a small black diamond figure near the end of an entry introduces words that are synonymous with the word being defined. Alone. Adjective. Synonyms: lonely, lonesome, lone, solitary. Synonyms are not definitions, although they may often be substituted for each other in context. Combining forms, prefixes, and suffixes. An entry that begins or ends with a hyphen is a word element that forms part of an English compound. Combining forms, prefixes, and suffixes are entered in this dictionary for 2 reasons: to make understandable the meaning of many undefined run-ons, and to make recognizable the meaningful elements of words that are not entered in the dictionary. Lists of undefined words. Many words that begin with the prefixes or combining forms anti, in, non, over, re, self, semi, sub, super, and un are self-explanatory combinations of the prefix or combining form in a word entered elsewhere in the dictionary, and they are listed undefined at the bottom of the page or spread on when they would normally appear if defined. Abbreviations and symbols. Abbreviations and symbols for chemical elements are included as main entries in the vocabulary. Abbreviations have been normalized to one form. In practice, however, there is considerable variation in the use of periods and in capitalization, and stylings other than those given in this dictionary are often acceptable. And that is the prefix, not the prefix, that is the preface and the explanatory notes. Thank you guys so much for watching.